I just learned the process of making apparel, design, sales, the whole deal, understand the whole market, saw the companies that were making, like OP and Hang 10 and all these big clothing companies, and that, what they were doing. And in that process, I learned about brands, that the brand was the only kind of intangible. Like it was the only thing that you couldn't just make. You couldn't just make a brand.
Yeah.
I mean, you could make a brand and then develop a brand and make it become a brand, but that takes time.
It's an honor to have you here.
Thank you very much.
I would say there are a lot of people that are in and around the Entrepreneur Studio that have deep respect for you as a person, as a human, as a professional athlete, as somebody who's sort of influencing a lot of things, and as an entrepreneur. Right?
Thank you.
And so it's a privilege to have you here. So, there's a lot of things that I'd say you're well known for. Okay. And one of them are these giant waves. So is it true in 2000 that you surfed the heaviest wave on record?
According to the so-called experts. The experts said yes.
The experts said yes. And you're like, it was just awesome.
There's always that.
There's always that. So what's that like? I mean, we were just sitting here talking about instincts and all that kind of stuff, and you have to be probably pretty aware of your surroundings to surf something like that and come out.
The truth about that particular wave was it was a culmination of kind of a lot of lifelong work, but then lifelong belief. So, and it represented something that I had, hoped for, dreamed of, thought possible, but never saw, kind of thing. And so I think it was an emotional, I mean, the fact that I got accolades from the industry or the audience, or that was the byproduct of, I think, of the dream.
Yeah.
Right. Of the dream. And again, in that particular, on that day, back to instincts, there was a lot of instincts going on to make it, first of all, to make it that I accomplished it, but then also to the fact that it happened at all.
Yeah. It's powerful. What, you just said it's something that you dreamed of. What's maybe some early surfing aspirations? Talk about the birth of the dream.
Oh, I was obnoxious as a little kid. I grew up I grew up at the most aggressive beach in the world at the time. It would drown people, I wouldn't say daily, but, monthly for sure. I mean, a lot of people drowned on the beach that I grew up on. And then all of the great kind of wave riders during that era came from all over the world to kind of test their skills. And they were walking through my front yard. So as a little boy or little man, whatever you want to call it,
youngster.
I was empowered to do what the men were doing, and the environment was conducive for that. It was a serious, threatening world. That I lived in and was raised in. So, and then it just went from where I was there to another kind of more remote, more threatening place. But I was, known to be obnoxious in my belief that I could do something, in it. I think that confidence that you believe especially when you're little, you Santa's real.
Yeah.
And you're going to be great. Like kind of thing. Like you have that, life hasn't just beaten you down with a club yet.
Yeah.
And you retain that optimism, like, cause I always say, if you take a little kid to a scary movie, it's scary. when you're a little kid.
Mm-hmm.
And then you get a little older and it's less scary because you've seen a bunch of scary movies
Yeah.
and you realize that they're just making them in their movies. But
Yeah.
when you're little, so, I had I think that was a big piece of it. The big piece of it is that I was highly impacted by my environment, in a really good environment to be impacted. And then I had an incredible mom too. My mom was amazing at cultivating my imagination.
Oh, wow.
So she was a big proponent of, read you, all the Lord of the Rings, read you the Jonathan Livingston Seagull, read you Dune, read you all these crazy books when I was young. My mom read me so many books as a young person. I think it affected my reading because it took me a while to really get good at. I'm probably not even good now at reading, but I can read. Let's just put it that way. I wouldn't go good. Good would be,
Like,
would be
I
a
don't
little
want
bit
to
of
read
a
in
stretch.
public.
That would be that'd be a stretch.
Yeah.
Good, yeah, no. But yeah. So I think that was, I think if I look at it, I'd go, there was a lot of things that lined up.
Yeah.
That came together to make it happen, and then you had to, ultimately survive.
Yeah. Yeah. So, how was it sort of like, being a kid at this, aggressive beach to what was sort of like the trajectory to start figuring out how to surf these giant waves? My stepdad has a saying, big wave riders are born and not made.
And so I think that I had the inclination. Well, first of all, I was a little daredevil, or whatever you want to say. Like I was a thrill seeker. Like I'm the kid that when you turn your head, he climbs to the top of the swing set and jumps off. And, I'm doing stuff that I think it was, for my mom, was very hard on my mom, because it was like, wow, he's lived all the way till 4 now. Yeah. He's lived till 6. So
these birthdays are worth celebrating.
Yeah, these are big birthdays. These are survival birthdays. And so I think I had that naturally. I think I had naturally, the stories, you jump off a giant cliff when you were this age, and, you did. And so I think I naturally was drawn to that. And then the environment that I was in, that's where a lot of the respect came from. And I always describe, I could say, how can you be poor? You're living in Hawaii, but we were poor. We had an outhouse. We lived in a house that had a bare tin roof that when it rained really hard, but we had a roof, so I won't complain.
Yeah.
But when it rained hard, you couldn't watch TV. And the TV had rabbit ears with aluminum foil, and there was 2 channels, and you'd get to the conclusion of the movie and it would start raining, and you'd be like, you put your head and you couldn't hear what happened. So, but you get the idea that so I had that kind of, I would say discrimination, but I had holes in my clothes, and our cars had bad mufflers, and, you got teased at school. And so, and then I was also, fair in a Hawaiian world. I was, looked like a descendant of Captain Cook, which didn't go well towards my help. And so I had those, and then thrill seeker, and then, then I have this thing. So then I'm, then again, right, chemistry, and the ocean is equality.
Yeah.
It's equal. I always say we're all equal before a wave. I don't care who you are, what you got, come over here. I don't care how smart, how rich, how strong. I put you in the water. We're in the water together. It's just you, me, and the wave. And so it's, what do you got? What do I got? Nice environment, good environment for kind of, I would say equality, but good environment to establish some sort of equilibrium, right? And then you have this thing where you're really drawn to it. So as I develop, learning how to swim in some of the most rugged waters in the world, and go from there to as I develop, surfing's interesting, where people just have a cap. They just go along, and then all of a sudden they get to a certain height, and they're good. The waves, a certain height wave, and they're good. And by the way, they're good for their whole life. It's not like they change and go like you. And then the guys that really are drawn to big surf, sometimes they don't even surf unless it's big. You don't even know the guys. All of a sudden you're like, you never seen this guy all year, and all of a sudden he comes out of his, you know, his construction truck or his hole or whatever, and he's like, here he comes, and you're like, and he might not even be talented. You're like, this guy can barely surf, but he just has the courage and the draw. He's drawn to the energy, that power. That power draws him. He goes there, and then, you know, and then so you have that, right? You have that group that, you know, and then some of the group is that they're good in little wave. They just do everything.
Yeah.
And but they keep going when the surf gets big. And that whole group that's drawn to the giant wave, it's a smaller group. It's just a lesser group. It's a little bit, I mean, I think there is a mechanism. There's a certain DNA, or there's a certain thing that you know, it's like the first group that you send out into the field, you know, whatever you go, hey, you guys go there.
These are the SEALs.
Go to the front and charge. And so it's a little bit of that. So, so you have that, and that was, and I just felt the best there. That was the thing that I was consistently drawn to, and everything else around that was just a means to get there, a means to get to that spot. And the thing about big waves is that they just are elusive.
Yeah.
So it's not a freebie. You don't just get to go in your airplane and fly up and jump out whenever you want to.
Yeah.
You can't. This is like,
you got to be paying attention, and you have to be available,
and you have to be ready. So you have all these things that have to happen, which makes it you got to have some dedication if you're going to go at it seriously and not, you know, kind of, I'd say, I mean,
as a hobby.
Yeah. Well, and or just under prepared.
Okay. Yeah.
So, I mean, what do we say? There's old and there's bold. There's no old bold. You know, it's like you go about certain things in a way that you can keep doing it, and I think that's a big piece of longevity, right?
Yeah.
Like you can just and it's interesting when dolphins are attacked, they form a ball. So dolphins, and they put the mothers and the babies in the center, then the adults are around, and the young male adolescents are on the very outside. Okay. The first line of defense.
Yeah.
The young, reckless
the
reckless
takers.
Ones, you know, those guys.
They're ready.
Send them in. You know, and there's probably a few older reckless ones in that group steering the boys, because it's their first time at it.
Yeah.
But I think there is a certain group that just kind of have that thing that they're all, it's all good. That's what they do. And you don't really have a choice.
So you're a young guy.
Yeah.
You're we'll just say bold. And
some people have other words.
Yeah, other words. You know, we'll be kind. And so you're bold, and you end up modeling and start doing movies, you know, and things like that. So what was sort of how'd you go from being this bold guy to doing that kind of work?
Desperation.
Oh yeah.
There's any way to fund or. I mean, I left school. My mom was at the time. My mom was a single parent, so she could sign me out of school, and so I went where I worked full time pouring concrete. And that was the first job I had, was concrete, and I grew up farming, fishing, and around a lot of physical activity, and then getting caught in riptide. So I wasn't scared of working, right? So, but I had to subsidize because they don't pay you a lot. And try to convince somebody to pay you to go ride a giant wave. Yeah. It's very difficult.
Very difficult.
Yeah. They're not quick to pay you or get a job. Like, can I have a job riding these giant waves? And they're like, well, that's dangerous. And what do we get for it?
Yeah. What would we get out of that?
So yeah, a lot of it was that. It was the subsidize the availability, you know, like being, like you said, being available, like being able to be available to do it and if you're have a conventional job where you're working all week long, you're not going to go, hey boss. I mean, in Hawaii, you probably can a little bit, but if there's a lot of surf, there's going to be a lack of a lot of work. And so you're going to be fired. You're going to not be working anymore. So that was out of that. That was that really the motivation. And I wasn't, above that. I wasn't like, I'm not going to model. I'm not going to do a movie thing or what. I'm going to be like, no, if this can, if I can, because those situations are there's a lot of room to be ready for a giant swell.
Yeah.
So that was the driving force, because like, how can I subsidize my passion? Like, what do I need? Whatever I needed to do, because I did it every other way. I did it, cut, arborist, this thing. I mean, I've, carpentry, mason, just excavate. I mean, just name a job. I probably scrub rib pans. I mean, it's not like I haven't done them, every single one of those things.
Yeah.
So, probably sometimes more than I really wanted to, but those were all to subsidize it, get you
to keep doing it.
Yeah.
So somebody's got to buy boards and stuff too, right? That's super good. Well, so what would you say has been, I know you were in Point Break for a couple of minutes, which is, pretty well known risk-taking movie, right? What movie are you most proud of?
Those two really don't go together. Those aren't exactly connected. Movie proud. Let me see. No. I mean, listen, I got to.
Well, the documentaries.
I got to work alongside George Clooney.
Yeah.
In The Descendants, that was an incredible opportunity, because he's a master at his craft. Doesn't take it too seriously in that sense, and that he doesn't put a bunch of stress around it. And that's probably why he's so good at it. He's able to, and maybe he doesn't have stress because he's so smooth, or he's so smooth because he doesn't have stress. I'm not sure which.
Yeah, chicken or the egg on that one. Yeah,
I'm not, but that was a fun, and anytime I'm getting to surf in something. I mean, the documentaries are different because they're not feature films, which you realize it's a very patient game. It's a game. It's a lot of waiting. It's a lot of waiting. It's a lot of hurry up and wait. It's a lot of, there's just a lot of confusion in the process, and that makes it difficult. I'm usually more, hey, dig the ditch from here to there. Okay, no problem. It's like, I don't care if we're digging all day and night, but at least we have this thing where this other one's like, okay, you ready? Okay, not ready. Okay, yeah. So that, but I've had the fortune to be around a crazy different variety of films, because where I grew up, they also shot a lot of movies when I was a kid. So you had King Kong coming through, and you had all these giant films, Raiders of the Lost Ark and this and that. So I grew up in an environment where there was a lot of filmmaking. My mom's friends were surf filmmakers, and then later became the leading IMAX filmmakers. And so I was around documentation and filming. And so I always had an interest with it. So it was, though a lot of times these were learning opportunities.
Yeah.
Like, hey, I get to learn, I get to go learn, the different things. And the truth is some of the most important learning is learning what you don't want to do. Get that list down quick. And then, because what you want to do can be ever changing, but what you don't want to do, let's try to figure out, or what situation you don't want to get in. And get back to the human, trying to avoid, danger,
peril.
Let's avoid peril. Whatever that is, and what you don't want to do is a form of peril. So let's work on that.
Yeah, that's good. Well, you're sitting here saying, you had to figure out how to subsidize this thing, and then all of a sudden surfing competitions is something you can be a part of. And maybe the money aside, what was the first competition like for you?
The truth is, I watched my stepdad surfing competition. I was at these beaches where these competitions were kind of occurring, and I was in a time in surfing where half the surfers were not competing, and then half the surfers were competing. So there wasn't an obligatory need to have to compete. Like, it wasn't like, that wasn't I could see that there was a way to have a career without having to be in competition.
Okay.
So I was like, and I, when we were kids, we did these little surf contests and it was fun, and you're with your buddies and you won a trophy and you got a t-shirt, and cool. It was great. And then you got to be a man, and then there was money, and then the aggression came in, and I was probably naturally too aggressive. This was not a good environment for me.
Okay.
So, so then I watched
to compete with yourself.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And exactly. Well, that's the most honest.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the least confusing, at least. I mean, compared to, and surfing is difficult to create competition in my opinion, because you're talking about judgment.
Yeah.
And so it's not so straightforward. I mean, you see what referees do in games and it drives people crazy. Imagine if that was determining the outcome every single time.
Yes.
You'd be lost. And so, or at least I would be. For some people, it's completely clear. So I had when I was young, I was like, and then I was like, you know what? I don't like that environment. I watched my dad compete, my stepdad, and one particular event was, he probably surfed as good as he had ever surfed in his competitive career. And, the other guy won by 0.01 and was crowned the world champion but needed to win to be the champ. And there was just some stuff that I was like, I don't think so.
Yeah.
I think I'm going to be a no-go on that one. And so I just, I did compete in windsurfing. I competed in paddleboard racing. I competed in things that had to do with time.
Yeah.
Because pretty straightforward.
Pretty straightforward.
I'm faster. I'm slower. Win, lose. It's pretty clear. You can go home and cry about it, but you're not that confused by it. And where this other thing is, you can have a phenomenal performance and be like, wow, that was kind of confusing. Like, why did, so that determined I was just like, I'm not going to subject my performance to judgment. I'm going to let the audience, first of all, I'm going to do it for myself. Yeah. Let's just go to the top. Like, I'll come in and I'll tell you how I feel about how I did. Mm-hmm. If you really want, if you're curious, I'll be like, and then I can present my performance to people to observe, and they can tell me if they like it or not.
Yeah.
And that's probably a pretty good sign. If it's like being an artist, if you like the painting and you go, I like that painting, and then people come and go, hey, I really like that painting. You're like, oh, cool. Then I was kind of on the right line when I said I liked it.
Yeah.
Kind of thing. So, or you know what? I don't care if you don't like it anyway. I like it.
Yeah. We keep doing it.
Yeah.
But I mean, I think that was, that approach is so innovative for the time that you were in and the time you started doing it. You're like, these, skating and all these kind of action sports, and surfing was there. Right. And then you're like, I'm going to unplug myself from this machine that's being designed. And you went and invented your own machine. Right. Which is like, I'm going to go surf the big stuff. I'm going to go get a lot of attention for doing that.
Yeah.
And I'm going to find a way how to design my life around that and design, my work habits and things like that. And I get to risk like crazy.
Well, the truth is that I went to Europe, and the Europeans supported me. They really, the French really love art.
Yeah.
So they loved my approach. I got a lot of support in Europe before I ever got any support in America. I went there as a windsurfer and knocked their champion off his speed title, and then because they like art, then I was able to use all the things that I was doing, which I was doing multiple disciplines and trying to be, and I was curious and about innovation always. Like, that's always been a piece of, and part of it is, I told somebody, I go, listen, when you live down a dirt road and you have one bicycle and it breaks, you have a tendency to make things. Like, you make things, you do things, you fix things. It's
resourcefulness comes out.
Gabby always asked me, she's like, how do you know how to fix all this stuff? I go, well, because if you didn't fix it, you didn't have it. So you just learn how to, you MacGyver it. You just you do.
Hey, duct tape and baling wire.
Amazing. Amazing. A little super glue, a little JB Weld, whatever. You go.
You know how to get it done.
That's right. And
well, that's amazing. Like this, all of the way that you designed your career, and what you pursued and how you pursued it, I think, teed you up for, what we like to talk about, which is entrepreneurship. So talk about how Laird Superfood was born and
Well,
what went into it.
well, the truth is it started it started early on in my career. I was and I looked at surfing and I go, well, where are people making money in surfing? And it wasn't the surfers; it was the apparel companies. And I'm like, oh, the apparel guys, I got it. And they were most of the apparel guys weren't great surfers. But they used surfers to sell apparel. And so then I got a guy that I knew had an apparel line, and he liked my surfing, and so I ended up becoming friends with him and got exposed to apparel. Like I went to sweatshops, I learned how to cut and sew, I learned how to. I wouldn't say I learned how to cut and sew. I just learned the process of making apparel, design, sales, the whole deal. Understand the whole market. Saw the companies that were making, like OP and Hang Ten and all these big clothing companies, and that what they were doing. And in that process, I learned about brands. That the brand was the only kind of intangible. Like it was the only thing that you couldn't just make. You couldn't just make a brand. I mean, you could make a brand and then develop a brand and make it become a brand, but that takes time. And that it has to have
intention.
And history. And you gotta, you don't just become a brand without a lot of investment. And then even then, if it's not authentic, then people can sense it, and then it's a bought brand. Then you just created something and you didn't really. So that's where I felt like that's when I kind of pulled back from that and just thought, well, I just have to focus on my passion, my thing. And I am my brand.
You'll be the brand.
I'll be the brand. And in the beginning, a lot of companies were helping me build my brand, like my sponsors, Oxbow, or like my sponsors, like American Express, like anybody who used me, anybody who used Laird Hamilton in their advertising was spending money on my brand, and building my brand. Which was building my brand.
You're building a personal brand, and they're adding their value, which builds you. And then
one authenticizes yours. Authenticizes yours, because if these companies that are great brands are saying, "Hey, this isn't he's endorsing our brand," that legitimizes your value. Anyway, but the thought that's the invisible thing that you can, and then what do you put that on, right? So then eventually, what do you put that? Where if you have that brand, because eventually, in the beginning you're sponsored, right? And then eventually you get to a point where you kind of need to sponsor yourself. Like you should be doing something for yourself. And so apparel made sense, hard goods, boards and stuff made sense. And then fitness, because fitness is something in my career that we've evolved into, which is really health and wellness and longevity and ultimately just being a better organism. But the Laird Superfood came out of, again, completely, because none of it is a strategic plan.
Okay.
None of it. Because if you said that, you wouldn't be honest, because there's too many things have to happen, and people like to take credit for things that have occurred, and because they had a dream or an idea, but the way it manifested itself wasn't
by design or intentional.
No, come on, which one? Well, who? No, don't go there. I don't care which one. I don't care who it is. I don't care which guy, brand, this. You name one. No. Not from. I mean, they started there and then it became this, or their intention was, I'll connect you, and all of a sudden you have, Facebook, or hey, I'm going to sell some books online, and you have Amazon. I'm saying, come on, I can. Let's just, things are, things are lined up the way they.
I mean, I would agree. I mean, every conversation that we have in this room, there is a evolution that happens. There's an initial discovery or a spark, something they're chasing, and then there's all the discoveries along the way, and then becomes this thing, right? So I think it has a lot to do with something that's like the theme that you and I have been talking about is this. I'm going to say situational awareness, or these instincts that you develop, and you got to be able to recognize an opportunity, right? And so you're sitting here paying attention to how you're like, man, how do you make money doing this thing that I really, really, really love to do? And you're paying attention to apparel and hard goods and equipment and things like that. And then when the fitness thing comes around, you're like, it's something that probably you saw as an opportunity to be like, this could be a good sort of longer term, right? Because there's a window of time that, are you going to be able to sponsor apparel or be endorsed by an apparel company or no, when you're not in the sport.
Do you want to? How about even if do you want to?
This is true.
Yeah. And I'm still not in the sport, and I could probably get it, but at a certain point you got to decide, and the one key element for me with any of them, any company I ever worked with, any business that I'm involved in, there's always one key element, which is got to be honest, got to be truthful, meaning you really use that.
Oh,
like at one point, I'm just saying at one point I was working with years ago, I was working with Mazda.
Yeah.
I didn't have a Mazda. I bought a Mazda because I'm not a hypocrite.
Yeah. That's good.
If I don't use it and it's not authentic to me, if I'm not, I bring my watch, I'm using the watches. I use the watch as a tool. So I'm using it when I do the thing, whether it's, so Superfood coming from a product that I was using, that I made, a recipe I made, that I was sharing with friends, that was working for me, that I developed to help me perform better, feel better, just be everything, everything like an improvement to my life. Right. And so the apparel is like, we're making clothes because I don't see anything that works, that I like, that is in a way that either the materials or the design isn't the way I want it. The boards are coming from boards that I've developed with shapers over years that work for me, that I don't see any, it's like, I don't want to do something that there's already something. Why would I go reinvent the wheel? I'm not making tires. There's 10 tire companies. I'll just go buy good tires. Why would I? So I want it to be authentic that way. I think that's important, right? That it's, because then it's easy to tell the truth. It's easy to talk about it. Then you're not having to make up stuff and pretend like you like it.
Yeah.
It's easy. Like it's don't set yourself up to be like, well, this is really good stuff, but I don't drink it. It's like, wrong. Bad dog. We say bad dog, but so that, I think that's the, and there's been a couple of moments when I've had to, make compromises. I mean, I always say easy to say no when you can say no when you can't say no. That's hard. That's the hard part. But at some point you got to draw some kind of line and you have to make decisions. And I've turned down a lot of opportunities over my career just because they were not honest.
Yeah, they weren't authentic.
I didn't believe in this stuff. I was like, that stuff crap. I'm not going to, endorse that. And then I think you have a certain responsibility. I see it a lot with athletes where they're doing things they don't need to do. Do you really need to do that? No, you're good. You don't need to do that. Why are you doing that? You're making that seem okay to a kid who's looking up to you, and that stuff's trash. But you're going to be like, so, I think there's, and people can smell that. People can smell that, and I believe that sometimes it takes a lot longer for them to smell it than you'd like them to, but that over time people can sense your genuineness, your honesty, your sincerity. Like, and I would like, again, back to the brand. What are the brand values? Like, hey, do you know, hey, when I go to that brand, that stuff's good. That board, that clothes, that thing, whatever that brand's associating with, I don't have to be like, I don't have to investigate. Yeah. I don't have to do like, hey, let me look under the hood and, oh, this stuff they're just trying to make a buck, which is, we got to live and survive it. But where's the line? Where do we make that? We make that line. So Superfood, completely authentic. That's just coming from a recipe and coming from a belief and and the boards that we make, the boards that we've developed over the years, the foils we do, all these, it's like, okay, Land Rover, whoever, whatever the brand is, either the quality of the brand, the kind of brand, what they stand for, we back them, or it's the brands that we do personally that we're involved in. And it's a battle, right? It's a battle to try to walk the line, right? Because you can be, hey, we'll just compromise a little bit here and compromise a little bit there. Pretty soon the whole thing's compromised.
Yeah, there's a wake of compromises.
Yeah, and so being conscious of that and setting some kind of guide rails, guide rails, like some of my guardrails were like, you got to actually use this stuff.
Yeah.
Like you got to actually believe in it. You got to actually be, like it's got to be real for you, because I think companies underestimate the intelligence of the customer.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes they just act like, oh yeah, and they just, no. And I think the customers underestimate themselves. They don't even know that they intuitively can sense things when they're a little bit, that just doesn't seem right. Or, we know that, and we're learning that more and more. That's probably why we're having more isolated, compartmentalized groups, and we're not just able to have one broad thing, and then everybody goes. It's like people are scrambling right now because of I think that tool, that device that we're using it's spreading lies, but it's spreading truth. So it's what do we say? Bright light, dark shadow.
Oh yeah.
So
it's creating the poles.
Yeah.
And the thing that I'd say is striking me, right, just going into a deep conversation with you, is you're a values-centric guy. You're integrity, right? Values I'm picking up on, right? Integrity, authenticity, and then innovation. And these are things that are sort of like you push the envelope because of something you believe, right? Which ultimately has a lot to do with, you were in an environment early in your life that was conducive to, I want to have fun, I want to take risk, and you were pushing the envelope, right? And that carried into this whole, the values thing is important, but then you have figured out how to take calculated risks, right? And I think that is something that entrepreneurs sort of have in them. I don't know if entrepreneurs are born or made. Who knows? I think everybody's a little bit different. But what are some of the things that, like, what's a story that had specifically to do with entrepreneurship? It could be Superfood, that is like, you knew you had a belief in something that was going to happen, and you had to make a decision that was going to be pretty risky in order to kind of bring something to life. What's a story that would kind of resonate with other entrepreneurs who've been through it?
With Superfood in particular, you're talking about having people eat something. There's a certain level of risk for that with that. Again, it's ingestibles. Like, is it really doing for me what it's doing? Will it do for other people what it's doing for me? Okay. That's and then we're, there's a daily battle of trying to make things affordable. So you're taking a certain risk by, it'd be probably better. We could probably go more, I would say boutique, but we could go more high end and be like, yeah, cool. And that would probably make the business easier. First of all, we could just, and then be cool with it in that lane, but that because we're trying to get it to people who need it the most.
Okay.
That's a risk. That's a big risk. Because we're trying to get it to people that, and so we have to make it affordable. And so in that process, that makes it, we could jack it and, put a few more whistles on it and be, and, it'd still be in the same values and still be all covering everything. But, that's one thing I think that's an ongoing battle. Like, and I mean, again, risk is a lot of it is exposure, right? Is it a one-time risk or is it a continual risk? Risk is, there's a bunch of different kinds of risk. There's expanded risk where you're just on the edge the entire time. And so and the way the rules of the universe are that the longer you're in this position, the more chances there are that something happens.
Yeah.
If we just go to the edge and we come back, then okay, there was a moment when you were vulnerable. And so, what is that? Those are different kinds of risk.
Yeah, totally.
So, and you said something earlier, which I was going to make a T-shirt, but in the beginning or during beginning, end, and now the pandemic which is pay attention.
Yeah,
pay attention. Like pay attention. And that's an ongoing philosophy for life. And risk is all about the paying attention.
Totally.
There's a lot less risk when you're paying attention. If you're driving with your eyes closed, it's very risky.
Yeah, you're on
an
edge.
open road with nobody on it. That's dangerous. You know? And so, I mean, I make a joke and I tell people, speed and take chances. But what that really means is watch what you're doing, because if you're speeding and taking chances, you're probably actually watching what you're doing. If I say, hey, drive conservatively and chances are you're going to drift off and like not watch what you're doing, and you're going to have look at your phone or do something that's going to put you in a worse position. But I think that's a big piece of it, is understanding, because risk is a lot less risky when you understand it, right? So you can come into a situation and go, hey, you're a young businessman, you gotta, I mean, people are funny. They want to own 100% of nothing versus a piece of something big. Sometimes I think that's another piece that happens where we want possession. So we want to possess the whole thing. It's ours. It's the whole thing. And it's like, okay, well, you're going to own all of it of nothing. Congratulations. Good job. Versus, and then that's a risk. Like, how much am I willing to give up of something, my baby that I started, and having all that stuff, thinking that maybe it's the only one you'll ever have, the only idea you'll ever have, the only
there's
opportunity.
No new ideas, right?
There's never. So again, I think that's a big, I think there's a lot of, life is a risky business. Every day you're risking your life. You get in an airplane, you get in a car. Living's dangerous.
Yeah, but you have an interesting relationship with danger, wouldn't you say?
Well, I think I have
particularly
been dating danger for a long time. What Gabby says, the only woman she'll share me with is the ocean. But yeah, I think I do. I mean, I think I do have it's an interesting thing, because again, because of because I've had a long relationship with risk, I'm able to be more risky. But I also am honest. I'm realistic about, like, I won't go into a situation that I don't have any skill in and then do something half-heartedly. Like, I can be more riskful in situations that I have more knowledge, and I have to be less risky in ones but overall, because of that, I can probably be even more risky in situations that I don't have, that other people wouldn't, because I just have a certain, I believe, I always say life is a formulaic process. There's a certain formula, you can just implement it. Like when you look at success and failure, when you look at learning how to do something, and, you have the beginning, which is, you don't know how to do it. And in order to be good at it, you're going to have to be bad at it, and you're going to have to fail. And so I think that's a woman, and I can't remember her name, but I always remember what she said. She goes, when you have a great idea, she said, because they asked her, well, if you have a really good idea, what do you recommend? She was she's a great entrepreneur. And they said, whatever you do, just don't tell anybody for the first year. And they were like, why? And she goes, they'll discourage you. They'll definitely discourage you, because people don't want to have to be responsible for their ideas. And so if you said, hey, I got this idea, they'd be like, oh yeah, you don't want to do that. That's a bad idea. Yeah, because then they can sit back and go, I could have done that, but that was, I don't want to do that. Like instead of, because you got to risk, you got to put your, put yourself out on the line and fail. You're going to fail. How many times are you going to fail? You're going to fail and fail and fail and fail.
Yeah. And it's about getting back up. And I think the thing that's really interesting is people's advice. It typically is connected very much to their level of risk and what they understand. And so when you're vulnerable as an entrepreneur and you've got an idea that's being born and you're trying to, bring it to life, you have people that you trust, but their relationship to risk and their relationship to what they're afraid of and things like that, their advice will follow that. Right. And so that's what I think that's really great advice is like, do your thing and don't tell anybody for a year and bring the thing to a nexus of some sort of result. And then you can start sharing it with people. That's actually a really powerful way to look at starting a business for sure.
Yeah. Well, I just never forgot that when she said that, because I'm like, yeah, because people will discourage you. Because I mean, listen, because innovation's the same as entrepreneur. Like that's the same. When you innovate, it's the same. You're going to follow the same, again, back to the formulaic process. If you're going to learn a new sport, if you're going to learn a new activity, if you're going to do a new bit, it's the formula is going to be the same, right? So, innovation, a big piece of innovation is, well, first of all, not be discouraged by the people, the naysayers, because the people are going to be like, that sucks, that's stupid, why would you do that? And that's the beginning, right? When you're first starting, because you're just fumbling. You're like, it's like I'm fumbling, I'm saying, I'm learning what's going on. Then all of a sudden you start to you see it, you see the hope, you get a moment of it and you're like, oh yeah, okay. But it all has to start with the premise or the idea. It all has to start with the original light that goes off, which is part of paying attention, right? It's like, hey, what could this potentially be if I'm able to make it have all the things it needs to be this thing, right? Like what's the destiny? You have to have an idea. You have to have some sort of destination. There's got to be some sort of, I tell people, I go, you don't get to the top of the mountain without looking up there going, hey, I'd like to get to the top of the mountain. Maybe not that mountain, but you have to have it something. You don't just look down and walk around and then arrive at the top and be like, wow, because there's too many times you have to have the north. You have to bring the compass back and go, okay, there it is again. Then you go, and you're like, oh, I'm a little off. I got to go this way. So you have to have some sort of guiding star, right? You got to have that. You got to have that.
And all the false summits along the way.
Always.
I thought I was almost done.
Oh yeah.
I was almost there. And I got to keep going.
And then you realize when you get there that actually the real destination is back at base camp. Oh, so that's the bad part. When you get to the very top and you think, wow, and then you're like, oh no, I'm only halfway there because I got to get back.
Oh.
And then you're disappointed because you already went to the crescendo, which was, so the destination's actually the parking lot.
Yep.
That you're leaving from.
Okay.
And then you get to the alchemist. So then you search the world for the treasure only to find that it was in your backyard.
Yeah. Well, that's, I would say for those of us who like to chase the spark, the return path is the one that we didn't anticipate.
Always.
Yeah.
Yeah. And down climbing is actually a lot harder.
Yeah.
On your knees. Yeah. 7 times the body weight every time you put so it's all that gravity.
Well, something that I think is really interesting about risk is not all of it works. Not every risk we take works, right? And we talked about the return path, so we won't talk about peril, but maybe we'll talk about knowing when to back out, right? So, what are some things that, getting prepared and then being able to back out? How do you sort of think about jettisoning, if that's even a word, but sort of getting to a place of like, you know what, I'm going to step back from this one. I took a chance and then I'm going to step back. What's sort of advice that you would give to help somebody recognize that moment?
That's a very difficult position because you don't know if another inch maybe pushes it over, right? And I have a tendency to be a little bit on the terrier side of things, which is just relentless, just obnoxiously. Like you can talk to Gabby, it's not fun to live. It's something that's like just back at it, just like this relentless thing. But at a certain point, when you're banging your head against the wall, for long enough, you have to be able to go, okay, well, this is just not working. And back doesn't necessarily mean quit.
Mm-hmm.
It just means retreat, reload, reobserve, then go, okay, well, we have a saying, water always looks for the path of least resistance. If you continue to go like that, you just go, okay, well, that's not working. Then we just shift over and we go like that. And then we shift over and we go and we just keep looking. And eventually you're like, oh, wow, here we go again. So, which is why I said it's so difficult to say, hey, you had a plan that brought you right there. I go, yeah, no, you went, you rammed your head, you banged, you went, you moved, you shifted, what do they say? The best plans are the ones most easily changed. So I think that that's a big piece of it, and when to make the call about, when it's not being productive or just you've done it enough time. At a certain point, you got to be honest with yourself. And I think, again, that's where intuition comes to play. Mm-hmm. That's when that invisible power that you have that exists in the universe that, you're kind of like, okay. All right. I'm listening.
Yeah.
I'm going to make a thing and not just be like, I'm going to just pretend like that power is not there or pretend like, that I'm not hearing that or I'm not observing that. And I think it varies in every situation. I think it varies with every person. Yeah. I think that's a very custom thing, depending on what you're involved in, what you're doing. For me, because of some of the physical things that I've done with endurance stuff, I just, there's a reward to relentless pursuit.
Yeah,
there is a reward. They're just and you know what? It's just, that's just the way it is. There is, and it's not fun. It's just,
yeah.
But there is a reward when you just continue to pursue and just, and again, not at all cost, right?
Yeah,
not at all cost. And so it's, when does it, and that goes back to family.
Yeah.
That goes back to health. That goes back to all these places where if you don't have balance and you don't have, homeostasis, if you're not then you go, okay, all right. Like, hey, you're not sleeping, you're not eating, you're in a thing, your relationships suck. You might reevaluate what's going on, buddy.
And that's the water saying, hey, that's one element. Right. It isn't just, sort of, I need to back out because it's failure. I like the rerouting thing that you're talking about. There's the relentless. Something that struck me when you just said that was, I think people recognize or look at failure because they're so attached to an outcome. And having maybe open hands to an outcome and being able to recognize a reroute that needs to happen because there's a destination that doesn't have a particular outcome.
Yeah,
I think that is the unbalanced relationship with failure that we have, right? So how do you sort of look at failure? And
well, I have a saying: no expectations, no disappointments. So good. in our game, we in the game of the ocean, we get a lot of forecasts. Mm-hmm. And they're good forecasts. They're beautiful. And you get excited and this is going to be incredible. And it just doesn't happen. And you're like, wow. And then you just, all that anticipation and you're just, so you get that roller coaster and you do that a couple thousand times. You start to learn. You're like, let's not quite get so worked up. We have to say, when you see the whites of the eyes, not before that. Like when you see the eyes, then that it's going to happen. So I think that's something to be honest. I worked with a Korean man in downtown Los Angeles, and he had like these sweatshops where they were making all this like jeans and jackets and all this stuff. And I used to sit with him at the end of every day and kind of try to get words of wisdom, mm-hmm. like, okay, I'm like young, searcher and sit with the the guy, and he came to California from Korea with $38 in his pocket.
Wow.
And within like 5 years had like a multi-million-dollar contracting business, flew his whole family over, and just had this whole, like, the kids are all go to USC thing like that, like
What a story.
severe, right? So you sit with him, and he used to drink Miller Lite. That was his beer of choice at the end of the day. And I'd sit and the most profound thing he ever said to me, which when you think of it, seemed a little boring, but he's like, when good times here, don't be too happy, because after the good time, the bad time comes. But when the bad time's here, don't be too sad, because after the bad time, the good time comes again. I'm like, so what? We're just non-emotional. We just stay flat. But there's something to be said about that, that kind of thing. Like, don't be too, just be like, okay, all right, cool. Like, it's happy. Oh, it's great. And then, oh yeah, it's great. And then it's like, okay. And, I mean, in big wave riding, we get post-traumatic, so we get these big jolt, high edge, and then you just plummet into the abyss after that. And then you start learning about that, and you start learning how to kind of deal with
Regulate.
regulate that thing.
Yeah.
And that actually just helps you be more prepared, right? So in a way, if you think about it in business, you think about, you get some big gains, and then you're going to have some big losses, and then you get some big gains and big losses. And, that's the same, back to that formula, where you're going to have, you think maybe it's because you're so smart, that's why you got these big gains. But then you think maybe it's because you're so not smart that you got these big failures, but it couldn't have nothing to do with either one of those. It's just the nature of the way that the energy works. And so I think there's something to be said, because at the end, right, it's not, it won't be about the destination. It'll be about the journey.